Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name's Kaylee and these are my books. So today's video is basically me talking about what SPFBO is, telling you that I am reading all of the finalists for SPFBO, and giving you a predictions list along with a little synopsis for each of the books. So first off, what is SPFBO? SPFBO is a bunch of letters that stands for Self-Published Fantasy Blog Off, and this is a competition for self-published fantasy that is run by a bunch of different blogs and some booktubers. I believe Mark Lawrence is the one that created this. I was made aware of this competition by Cassidy from Covers with Cassidy, and she has a fantastic video explaining what SPFBO is, so I'm going to have that linked down in the description. But the very basics of SPFBO is there are 300 self-published fantasy books that can be entered into this competition. The rules are they have to be fantasy, they have to be self-published, and they have to be released in the year that the competition is taking place. And basically, of these 300, each blog team or booktuber team gets 30 books that they have to read. And so there are 10 teams total, and each team chooses out of these 30 books to select one finalist. And basically then there are 10 finalists in SPFBO, and of the 10 finalists, everyone rates the finalists, and then there's one winner selected. The goal of this competition is just to shine a bunch of light onto self-published fantasy, because of course they don't have big marketing teams behind these books, so it's hard to find out about them, and basically just show off all the fantastic fantasy books that are self-published that year. I was invited by Cassidy to participate in Cassidy's version of SPFBO, and basically Cassidy has put together a team of 10 booktubers and bookstagrammers where we are all rating the 10 finalists for SPFBO, and we all have one rubric that we are working off of, and we will be selecting a winner in our group. The winner will be the book that gets the highest average scores amongst all 10 of us. And again, we're all working off the same rubric, so our scores should be fairly objective. I normally rate books based off of my personal enjoyment and not necessarily objectively about how impressive the story was. But for this challenge, I am attempting to rate books much more objectively, and personal enjoyment is just one category on the rubric. So I'm really trying to zoom out and be fair, and just because a book doesn't have like my preferred tropes in it doesn't mean it's going to get a low rating. There's much more information about how all of us are rating the books and who is involved in this on a website that Cassidy actually created, so that will be linked down in this description box below. Feel free to check out the website, and that website is going to be updated as we all are reviewing these books with our scores for each of the books along the way. So for this video, I'm basically talking about the 10 finalists and telling you my predictions for which ones I think I'm going to rate the highest and which ones I think I'm going to rate the lowest. So I'm going to start from the bottom, and there's 10 total, so what I think is going to be in my 10th slot is Small Miracles. This book is described as a feel-good comedy fantasy book. It's very cozy fantasy. It has angels and demons and romance and friendship and those sort of vibes in the book. I've heard this being described as kind of like The Good Place meets The Good Omens. That was described by Rachel. But basically the premise for this story is a fallen angel is in debt with her angel bookie, and in order to pay her gambling debts, she has to tempt some mortals into doing sins. I don't know, she's just a temptation. She has to tempt them. You know, I'm assuming tempt them into committing sins. But basically, the mortal she chooses is very, very hard to tempt. And so this book is just about her trying to tempt this mortal so she can repay her gambling debt. The reason why this is in my last place is because it just, I don't know, it doesn't sound that interesting to me. To me personally, I like more higher stakes fantasy, and when a book is described as being a comedy, I immediately kind of like get weirded out, because a lot of the times comedy in books does not hit for me. But if this comedy does hit for me, if I do find it funny, it could be amazing, because I like humor in books. It's just humor is so subjective that most of the times when a book is trying to be funny, it just kind of tends to be obnoxious for me. But even though this is in my 10th spot, I do still have high hopes. I have high hopes for all 10 of these books. It's just one of the books had to be in the 10th spot, and it happened to be this one because I don't normally go for comedy fantasies. Now in the 9th slot is Scales and Sensibility. This is described as a Regency rom-com with dragons. The reason why it's in my 9th slot is I just don't like historical romances. I love romances, but historical romances are definitely my least favorite type of romance. So this is a Regency romance. But the dragons being involved does intrigue me. So the premise, I believe, is a woman has a really terrible cousin. She steals the terrible cousin's pet dragon, and she meets this fortune hunter along the way, and them two go on this adventure with this pet dragon and fall in love, I guess. Now, negatives, I really, really despise this cover. And again, that is just subjective. That is just my opinion. I do not like the cover. I would never pick this book up on my own, but I am excited to pick it up because of this competition. And so because of the cover, and because I'm not into historical romance, it's low down on my list, but I am willing and hopeful to be surprised. Next up, the title is really long, and I'm having to read off my computer to make sure I'm getting it right. It is Miss Percy's Pocket Guide to the Care and Feeding of British Dragons. So again, you can kind of see another cozy one. I don't typically go for cozy fantasy, so all the cozies are down low on my list. This is a book about a spinster who inherits a dragon age, but in this world, dragons are not known to exist. So she is just a British spinster suddenly having a pet dragon that she has to take care of. I've heard that this book does have found family themes, and I love found families. That's why it's a little bit higher than the other two on the list. But ultimately, I'm not like super excited about this because, you know, these nice, wholesome, quirky books are not normally my cup of tea. But I am willing to be surprised. You know, I'm really hopeful that I'm gonna love this, even though it is number 8 on my list. Next up, for in the number 7 slot, is A Song for the Void. This is a bit of an outlier in the competition because it is a cosmic horror. And so I'm very interested to see how many fantasy elements are in this novel for it to be considered as a self-published fantasy, but I think the author self-describes this book as cosmic horror primarily. But you know, the line between cosmic horror and fantasy is really thin at times. So I'm not surprised that it is in the competition, but it is a bit of an outlier when it's on the list with other much more traditional fantasies. A Song for the Void, like I said, is a cosmic horror, but also it is historical fiction. It's reimagining of Chinese history set in the 1850s between the two opium wars. And basically it is about this military ship that is hunting pirates out in the ocean, but then something ancient, dark, mysterious, scary starts hunting the hunters. And it's about this ship trying to survive in a water monster environment, maybe? I don't know. So typically, cosmic horror is scary for me. I have not found a cosmic horror that I have enjoyed. Cosmic horror, my issue with it is it's all about the fear of the unexplainable. And my favorite thing in fantasy is when things are explained. Like, I love info dumps, you know? So when the fear is all about the unexplainable in cosmic horror, I'm always like, but can you explain it to us? Like, can I know the rules? And so A Song for the Void being cosmic horror definitely scares me because I'm afraid that we're not going to get answers, and I want answers. And then it being historical fiction also kind of scares me because I don't tend to go towards historical fiction. But reasons why it's higher up on my list than the other ones is this ocean setting is very intriguing, and I do like horror. So if it's a horrific ocean sort of situation, I mean, that is right up my alley. I'm very excited for that. So in the 6th position is Mysterious Ways. And this book, I believe, is a fantasy, but it also has a sapphic romance as a big part of the plot. So I've seen some people actually describe this as fantasy romance, but I think there's quite a lot of fantasy elements in it as well. It just also features a sapphic romance, but that sapphic romance is something I'm very interested in. I love my fantasy romances. I love sapphic romances, so I'm excited about that. The only reason why it's number 6 and not even higher on my list is because the plot itself I'm not super intrigued by. So I think we follow the commander of the city watch, and basically she is seeing all of the horrible things happening in the city, all the injustices, and she's trying to commit as much change as she can by solving all these murder mysteries and stuff like that. But this society is also incredibly religious. They all are devout to a goddess, and she is confused how this goddess can allow all of these injustices to happen. So I think she goes on a journey to try to figure out the answers for why the goddess isn't intervening more often to fight these injustices. So basically our main character is trying to figure out a way to make society better than it is. And along the way, she must find someone to fall in love with, because fingers crossed, I'm right about that sapphic romance, because that's the only reason why it's so high up on my list, is that sapphic romance. I also believe this is a fantasy that has a purely matriarchal world, which is very intriguing to me, because oftentimes with fantasy, it's very patriarchal. So just a nice switch up, you know, nice switch up of who holds the power in this society. And then in the 5th position is Umbral Storm. Now in this world, in ancient times, there were these creatures that were very, very powerful, but 1,000 years ago they were defeated, and the shards of them all kind of split out across the universe, and the chosen ones can find the shards, wear the shards, and be incredibly powerful. So knowing that information, we then follow a orphan boy who is also indentured to this horrible slaver, who seems to have a bit of a chosen one trope going on, and I think he's going to be very, very important when these ancient powers begin stirring again. And I believe this is one of those stories that takes, you know, a slave character into a hero character. I love those kind of stories. I'm very excited for this one. You know, numbers 5 and up are ones I'm very, very hyped for. Like, I'm excited for Umbral Storm. The only reason why it's down at the 5th position is because I've heard some reviews from some people that are currently reading it right now not being so great, but the synopsis just sounds so good that I'm still predicting it to be my number 5. And then in the 4th position, and this one wins for my best cover, I love the cover to this book so much, is Tethered Spirits. Now in this book we follow 3 different people. We follow a man with a curse who is trying to break this curse that he has, a woman with magical abilities that gets hired by the man with the curse, but she seems to have a lot of ulterior motives for taking on this job, and then another woman who is trying to save her brother from a fatal illness and thinks that the man with the curse has answers. This is up very high because it seems to be more traditional type of fantasy, bigger world, interesting powers going on in the background, and honestly the cover is just so freaking cool that I had to put it up close to the top. Next up in the number 3 position is Fire and the Fourbearers. I believe this is a fantasy that follows the daughter of a deserter and the son of the king, and they both have very, very important roles in this big legacy for the world. And I believe it starts out with the daughter of the deserter being mistakenly identified as the empire's savior, or the prophesied savior. So she is having to pretend to be this person, and the son of the king and the king themselves are having to also allow her to pretend to be this person, because I guess this lie is what allowed them to become royal in the first place. This plot is incredibly intriguing to me, and these 2 people will be key players as the Return of Legend begins. And the Return of Legend involves these ancient monsters coming back to life and people being able to practice this intense ancient elemental magic. I think this plot sounds so cool because it just sounds like a bunch of people are just bumbling along trying to fake it until they make it, and that sounds so entertaining to me. And I love prophecies, I love ancient monsters, I love elemental magic, and it sounds like we're gonna have some really cool character dynamics between this fake prophesized savior with the son of the king. Like, that sounds so cool. And then next up is 13th Hour. Cruel Gods is the name of the series. I know on the cover it looks like the name of the book is Cruel Gods, but that is the series title. Kind of like a Crescent City situation going on here. But this one is number 2 because this is a steampunk fantasy, and that sounds so cool. Basically, this is a world where cruel gods are the gods of this world. I mean, it kind of goes with the title. The cruel gods are gods. Don't you know? But basically, this is a society where the cruel gods have all the power. They're a very devout society. Suddenly, though, a bunch of monsters start attacking the society, and it's going to take the godless heathens, the people that don't agree with the gods, to save everyone. So I think it's going to be a dilemma of religion versus power, the gods versus the mortals, and then these creepy monsters attacking everybody. It just sounds really, really cool. Love steampunk fantasy. I love when religion is in fantasy, and I love when people are rebelling against the gods in fantasy. So it has a lot of things, a lot of ideas that I love to read about, and that's why this is in my 2nd position. And then spot number 1, the book that I anticipate liking the most out of all 10 of these books is, drumroll please, A Touch of Light. A Touch of Light. You've probably heard about this book. Out of all of them, this is probably the one that's gotten the most traction on booktube. A lot of that because of Cassidy. Cassidy has hyped this book up so much, and honestly, it's purely because of her that this book is in my number 1 position. But I know the people that have begun reading this book also have all been really loving it, so I think I'm going to love it too. The author is a fantastic person, so I'm very excited to read his book. And I believe this is another fantasy that has religion and politics being one and the same. There's a looming blight over the world. There are really cool griffin riders and magical creatures in this story. And I believe a lot of the story centers around the morality of resurrection and the concept of death not being as black and white as we are used to seeing it. I think it sounds great. My friends have all been really loving it. I think I'm gonna love it too. So this is my #1 spot. All right, we've gotten through all the predictions. So I just wanna tell you a little bit more about my plans for SPFBO. I plan on doing vlogs where I read all of these books, but I think I'm going to do each vlog where I read 2 books. The first vlog you'll see on my channel is me reading A Touch of Light and Small Miracles. So I'm going to be reading the #1 book and the 10th last book. And we'll see if my predictions hold true. I'm hoping that I'm wrong. I'm hoping I love both of them. But you know, I think I'm gonna enjoy all of these. It's just, there has to be some in the last place and there has to be some in the first place, you know? But these are the finalists. These books have already made it past 300 other books in this competition. So yes, Small Miracles and A Touch of Light will be in the first vlog. Stay tuned for that. And I'm curious, let me know down in the comments what other books I should prioritize, because I don't really know what books I will be reading for the future ones. Of course, I'm going to be reading all of the books on this list, but I just don't know what order to read them in. So if you all have any thoughts about which books you would like to see sooner rather than later, let me know down in the comments which ones I should read first. And if you guys don't really have many thoughts, I'll probably just do a random generator to see which 2 books I read next. But I'm hoping this month to get to A Touch of Light and Small Miracles. And towards the end of this month, beginning of next month, you should be able to see the vlog where I read both of these and review both of these. Let me know if you're going to be reading any of the finalists in SPFBO. I'm so excited. I'm so happy that Cassidy invited me to participate in this, and let me know about this world of self-published fantasy, because it's such a fantastic world to be a part of. And if you enjoyed this video, please like this video and subscribe for more content. You don't want to miss my upcoming vlogs where I read these books, and I will see you next time. Bye!